Test, test. This hearing will come to order. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. Today we're going to mark up 7 bills, several of which I will be asking unanimous consent to consider in block. All these bills have had legislative hearings in Congress. I'm supportive of the bills on today's agenda as they're common sense measures that should garner bipartisan support, and I believe they will. I hope everyone on the subcommittee will support these bills as well as we move forward in the process. In accordance with committee rules, the subcommittee has contacted the Congressional Budget Office seeking informal preliminary cost estimates for each of the bills considered this morning. Many of these preliminary scores are only a range of potential costs because the subcommittee has still not received official cost estimates from the bills from the Congressional Budget Office. None of these bills today include the offsets that will be necessary to move forward. However, as we discuss what bills will go to the full committee markup and then the floor, we will add offsets to ensure that we are in accordance with the House rules and we are not passing legislation on the backs of the American taxpayers. As is our normal practice, we will need to get official scores and identify necessary offsets before any of these bills are considered on the floor. I look forward to working with the ranking member and other members of the subcommittee to find offsets that have the least impact on our veterans. I also want to say that there are still multiple opportunities to improve and make necessary changes to these bills. The ranking member and I will continue to work with our colleagues on the committee and any stakeholders that have feedback on these bills as we continue to work through the legislative process. I'm proud of the nonpartisan work that the subcommittee continues to do, and I believe these bills that we are going to consider today truly reflect that process. One of the bills that we're going to consider today is my TAP Promotion Act, which allows veteran service organizations to present information to service members as they transition out of the military. I kind of chuckle at that because this should be a no-brainer. This is a critical step for our veterans to keep them engaged in the community and help prevent suicide. Over the last few months, I've been able to travel and speak with transitioning service members, both in the United States and abroad. I think this connection with the VSOs is vital. We've got a lot of work to do to get TAP where it needs to be, and I make sure that when our service members transition out of the military, they still have a support system. And I plan to look for more ways to improve the TAP program. I now recognize the distinguished ranking member of the distinguished ranking member of the committee for any opening remarks you may have.
Well, I appreciate the distinguished chairman. I expect our work to be quick today, so I'll keep my comments short. As the chairman said many times in this room, the subcommittee is not a place for partisanship. This is a place for results. Today we'll consider 7 bills on our agenda with the hope that once we find agreement on a few outstanding issues, that all of them will swiftly be considered at the full committee and eventually become law. I thank the chairman and the staffs for their hard work, and I yield back.
We'll now call up H.R. 3943, the Service Member Employment Protection Act of 2023. The clerk shall report the bill.
H.R. 3943, to amend Title 38 United States Code to improve the
bill was circulated in advance pursuant to committee rules without objection. The first reading is dispensed with, and the bill is open for amendment at any point. I recognize Representative Franklin to offer an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment in nature of a substitute at the desk.
The clerk shall report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 3943.
I ask the unanimous consent that further reading of the amendment in the nature of a substitute be dispensed with and that it be considered base text for the purpose of the markup. Hearing no objection, so ordered. Mr. Franklin is now recognized for 5 minutes to speak in support of his amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 3943.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment in the nature of a substitute would improve the bill I introduced earlier this year based on advice from the Department of Labor, the agency that runs the USERRA program, and outside experts. Specifically, my amendment in the nature of a substitute would modify the section that allows for injunctive relief to ensure that all the essential requirements are included for consideration in those claims. It would require GAO to examine USERRA claims brought to the Department of Labor so this committee has an opportunity to understand the experience of service members that are bringing claims. It requires the GAO to report on the use of USERRA in the intelligence community before removing the current exception for intelligence agencies in law. We are told that most, if not all, intelligence agencies have a USERRA-like process in place. However, we've been given very little detail on that process in the various intelligence community agencies or how frequently it is utilized. This report will shed light on how they are abiding by the spirit of USERRA. It removes provisions that may be problematic in their application, including on prima facie findings based on notice of USERRA rights by government agencies. It also allows for law enforcement sensitive information to be provided in a separate addendum to the committee when the Department of Labor provides us with updates to the USERRA manual. I believe these changes make the bill stronger, and I urge all my fellow members to support the amendment. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman for his amendment in the nature of a substitute, and it has my full support. Do any other members wish to comment on the amendment in the nature of the substitute to H.R. 3943?
Mr. Chairman.
I now recognize the ranking member.
I thank the gentleman for his amendment to H.R. 3943, which further refines his bill. USERRA is the bedrock law protecting service members from discrimination in the workplace. The men and women who choose to serve in our military already pay a steep price. Their lives are disrupted and put at risk every day they put on a uniform. They shouldn't have to worry about losing or falling behind in the workplace. I urge support for the ANS and yield back.
Thank you, sir. The question now occurs on Mr. Franklin's amendment in the nature of the substitute to H.R. 3943. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment in the nature of the substitute is agreed to without objection. The motion to reconsider is laid on the table. I now recognize Mr. Levin for a motion.
I move that H.R. 3943, as amended, is forwarded favorably to the full committee.
There's a motion in favor to favorably forward H.R. 3943 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and H.R. 3943 as amended is favorably forwarded to the full committee. I now call up H.R. 3848, the Home Act. The clerk shall report the bill.
H.R. 3848 makes certain improvements in the laws administered by the Secretary of Veterans Affairs relating to homelessness and for other purposes.
The bill was circulated in advance pursuant to committee rules, and without objection, the first reading is dispensed with, and the bill is open for amendment at any point. Does any member wish to be recognized to speak on the bill? Hearing none, I recognize myself for the purpose of offering an amendment in the nature of a substitute. The clerk shall report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 3848. Strike all after the enacting clause and insert the following. This act may be cited as the Housing Our Military
I
Veterans.
ask unanimous consent that further reading of the amendment in the nature of the substitute be dispensed with and that it be considered base text for the purpose of the markup. Hearing no objection, so ordered. I recognize myself for 5 minutes to speak in support of the amendment to H.R. 3848. This amendment strikes the section of the bill addressing the West Los Angeles campus and increases the grant and per diem rate for providers who provide transitional housing to homeless veterans through a cost of living adjustment for inflation. The bill allows the Secretary to grant 200% GDP rate waiver for up to 20% of providers. Finally, this ANS tightens up the language on a grant program to provide needed assistance to homeless veterans. This amendment is a result of a bipartisan cooperation and discussion, and it provides a fiscally responsible way to continue getting homeless veterans off the streets. In this Congress, we have heard many times about how Republicans do not care about homeless veterans. I'm pleased to offer this positive change to my friend and colleague, Ms. Chavez-DeRemer's bill, and provide a path to continue to fund these programs. We will continue to work with our friends on the other side of the aisle and the VA to ensure that we are providing services to our homeless veterans in a fiscally responsible way. I urge members to support this amendment. I yield back. Do any other members wish to comment on the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 3848?
Mr. Chairman.
I recognize the ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly share the desire to address veteran homelessness. As we move this package forward, I do remain concerned that the GPD rate proposed in H.R. 3848 doesn't completely meet the needs of providers and veterans in their care. I'm also concerned about a few technical aspects of H.R. 3848 and VA's ability to swiftly implement this legislation as written. It's critical that our community GPD providers receive relief soon to ensure they can continue giving the best care and resources to our homeless veterans in transitional housing. The initial 2023 point-in-time count results we've seen are alarming. Homelessness is rising around the country, and few areas are immune to the affordable housing crisis our country faces. Despite huge efforts from VA and its community partners, veteran homelessness rose last year in San Diego. The GPD program is one of the few lines of defense that VA has to get veterans off the streets into shelter and on the road to permanent housing. So it's critical that we fund this program at the level it requires to meet the needs of the growing homeless veteran population. I'd again like to voice my support for H.R. 491 and H.R. 645. These bills are clean, clear solutions to address the needs of VA, providers, and most importantly, veterans experiencing homelessness. Those bills have the support of the VSOs and homeless advocacy community, and we know that VA can implement them with ease. In fact, just yesterday, we received a letter from the Salvation Army in support of H.R. 491 and against the rates proposed in H.R. 3848. My staff and I look forward to working with the majority to continue to refine H.R. 3848 so that it meets the needs of homeless veterans and can be implemented expeditiously by VA. Appreciate the chance to work with you on it, and I yield back.
I hear and thank the ranking member. Does any member wish to offer an amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute? Hearing none, the question occurs on the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 3848. All in favor will say aye. All opposed say nay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment in the nature of a substitute is agreed to. Without objection, the motion to reconsider the bill is laid on the table. I now recognize my distinguished colleague, Mr. Subcommittee, for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Distinguished, handsome Chairman. I move that the subcommittee favorably forward H.R. 3848 to the full committee.
There is a motion to favorably forward H.R. 3848 as amended. All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and H.R. 3848 as amended is favorably forwarded to the full committee. I now call up H.R. 3900. The clerk shall report the bill.
H.R. 3900, to amend Title 38 United States Code to establish certain rights for spouses of members of the Uniformed Services.
The bill was circulated in advance pursuant to committee rules, and without objection, the first reading is dispensed with, and the bill is open to amendment at any point. I now recognize the ranking member, Mr. Levin, for the purpose of offering an amendment in the nature of a substitute.
I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk shall report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 3900. Strike all after the enacting clause and insert the following.
I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of the bill of the amendment in the nature of a substitute is dispensed with, and that it will be considered base text for the purpose of the amendment. Without objection, so ordered. Mr. Levin is now recognized for 5 minutes to speak in support of his amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 3900.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last month, our subcommittee brought in stakeholders to offer testimony on H.R. 3900, the Job Security Pilot for Military Families Act. Based on that hearing and the perspectives that we heard, this ANS makes two significant changes to the legislation. First, the ANS limits these new USERRA protections to military spouses that are federal employees during a 5-year pilot. Second, the ANS adds new robust reporting so this committee can gain valuable data on the current state of military spouse unemployment. By combining this valuable data with the pilot for federally employed military spouses, we can evaluate whether new protections are effective or not. We've shared this text with community stakeholders along with our federal partners, and I'm confident it will improve the lives of military spouses without negatively impacting the work of the federal government. I thank the chairman for considering this legislation, and I urge support for my ANS to H.R. 3900, and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman for his amendment. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes for comments. I just have to say that I do have reservations about this. However, I do trust your judgment. And so I will support this amendment. I encourage other people, the members of the committee, to do so. But this is something that will be watched very closely to make sure that it performs as advertised. With that, I yield back. You good?
I agree with that.
Right on. I yield back. Do any members wish to comment on the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 3900? Are there any amendments to the amendment in the nature of a substitute?
I have an amendment at the desk.
Mr. Levin is now recognized for 5 minutes to speak in support of his amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 3900.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment simply puts DOL vets and Assistant Secretary Rodriguez in charge of administering the pilot created by this legislation. DOL vets is in charge of administering USERRA, and therefore they should be put in charge of the pilot in this ANS. I urge support, and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman for his amendment, and I do support it. Do any other members wish to comment on the amendment? Hearing none, the question now occurs on the 11th amendment to the amendment in the nature of substitute to H.R. 3900. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. Are there any further amendments to the amendment in the nature of a substitute? Hearing none, the question occurs on the amendment in the nature of a substitute as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment in the nature of a substitute is agreed to. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. I now recognize Mr. Levin for a motion.
I move that we forward HR favorably to the full committee.
There is a motion to favorably forward H.R. 3900 as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and H.R. 3900 as amended is favorably forwarded to the full committee. I now ask unanimous consent to consider en bloc the following bills with amendments in the nature of a substitute, H.R. 3898 and H.R. 3981. Hearing no objection, so ordered. The clerk shall report the bills.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 3898. Strike all after the enacting clause and insert the following. This act may be cited as the transcript
The
assuring.
bills were circulated in advance pursuant to committee rules. As I ask that the reading of the bills be dispensed with and bills be open to amendment at any point. Without objection, so ordered. Does any member wish to speak on any of the remaining bills on the agenda?
Mr. Chairman.
I recognize the ranking member.
Thank you, Chairman Van Orden, for advancing these two bills to the full committee. Included in this en bloc package are two bills improving the student veteran experience. I remain incredibly proud of the work this committee did in passing the Isaacson-Rowe Veterans Healthcare and Benefits Improvement Act. The law was a groundbreaking step forward in GI Bill oversight by empowering state approving agencies, or SAAs. H.R. 3981 builds upon those efforts and requires that educational institutions self-report punitive actions taken against them, such as heightened cash monitoring, loss of accreditation, or placement on provisional certification status. A school would have 30 days to notify their SAA of such an action. The amendment in the nature of a substitute simply removes one provision from this legislation to ensure it's not delayed by scoring concerns. I'm willing to support this change with the expectation that benefit restoration for student veterans finally gets considered at the full committee level. It's been 3 months since our subcommittee considered Representative Ramirez's Student Veteran Benefit Restoration Act. Our staffs have been hard at work with schools and veterans groups to reach a consensus, and I believe that legislation is now ready to be considered in the full committee next week. So I hope we can act as soon as possible to restore benefits from those who've been defrauded. Meanwhile, the changes in the ANS to H.R. 3898 make needed improvements requested by the Department of Veterans Affairs to ensure this bill can be implemented as intended. Both of these bills will help student veterans pursue higher education, and for that reason, I urge support for the en bloc package, and I yield back.
There are amendments in the nature of the substitute to both of these bills that are considered base text for the purpose of markup. Without objection, so ordered. Do any other members wish to offer an amendment to either amendment in the natures of a substitute?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to thank you for offering this en bloc package and offer a few comments.
Outstanding, please. You are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for offering this en bloc package, which includes your amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 3981. I'm glad we can work in a bipartisan manner to support our veterans. I just want to take a moment to highlight that nearly 2/3 of student veterans are first-generation college students. So think about that. 2/3 of our veterans are still the first person in their family to go to college. Imagine all of the difficulties for any student in attending college, and then on top of that, navigating it as a veteran and being the first person in your family to try and get that degree. That's why the GI Bill education benefits and support from the VA are so vital, and why I introduced H.R. 3981 as my first veterans bill. The underlying bill, the Veterans Education Oversight Expansion Act, is supported by almost 24 VSOs and seeks to improve the implementation of the landmark Isaacson-Rowe Act, which our colleague Ranking Member Levin spearheaded. It amends the reporting requirements of institutions and mandates that the VA create a centralized database of risk-based surveys, a database that ought to be readily accessible and comprehensive within 180 days. Anything we can do to support the education of our vets, to give them the opportunities and tools necessary to succeed, is something that I can support. I'm proud to support this package and to help get this text across the finish line and ensure that our vets and their benefits are being protected. I yield back.
Thank you very much, sir. It has been brought to my attention that apparently you and Congressman Barr are supposed to restart the Bourbon Caucus, and we're going to hold your feet to the fire on that one. Thank you very much. Do any other members wish to offer an amendment to either amendment in the nature of a substitute? Okay. The question now occurs on agreeing to the amendments in the nature of a substitute, including included en bloc. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. I now recognize Mr. Levin for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that H.R. 3898 as amended and H.R. 3981 as amended be forwarded favorably to the full committee.
There's a motion to favorably forward the bills as amended, included en bloc. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the bills are favorably forwarded to the full committee. I now ask unanimous consent to consider the following bills en bloc: H.R. 3933 and H.R. 3874. Hearing no objection, so ordered. The clerk shall report the bills.
H.R. 3933, to amend Title 10 United States Code to authorize representatives of veteran service organizations to promote certain benefits available to veterans in the course of press.
The bills were circulated in advance pursuant to committee rules. I ask the reading of the bills be dispensed with, and the bills are open to amendment at any point. Without objection, so ordered. Do any members wish to speak on any of the remaining bills on the agenda?
Mr. Chairman.
I now recognize the ranking member.
Thank you, Chairman Van Orden, for advancing these two bills to the full committee. I'm pleased that your TAP Promotion Act is included in this package because I believe there is a place for VSOs in the transition process. VSOs are incredibly valuable during the difficult time period of transition, and helping them connect with transitioning service members is just common sense. Also in this package is Representative Rosendale's Veteran Education Assistance Act. While there is work still to be done on this education package, I agree we're well served advancing this bill to the full committee where we can continue refining it. It's yet another example of this committee putting our work ahead of any partisan games. I urge support, and I yield back.
Thank you. No amendments were filed on these bills. Do any members wish to offer an amendment? Okay, hearing none, the question now occurs on the passage of the bills included in block. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. I now recognize Mr. Levin for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that H.R. 3874 and H.R. 3933 be forwarded favorably to the full committee.
There's a motion to favorably forward these bills en bloc. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the bills are favorably forwarded to the full committee. I ask unanimous consent that the committee staff be authorized to make technical, clerical, and conforming changes to the bills favorably forwarded today. Hearing no objection, so ordered. I thank the members for their attendance today, and the subcommittee is adjourned. Time.